So this week I have a special guest by the name of Michelle Rowland. Now Michelle, as well as being a consultant and trainer in the project management world and program management world, she's also a chief examiner. And welcome to episode 9 of the Corporate Show with myself, ManjeetNijjer, your host. Now, as you know, over the past X amount of weeks, 7 in fact, I've been introducing you to the world of training from a corporate perspective. So any training you need, different subject matters, different methodologies and frameworks. So we've been talking to different trainers. This week, I thought I'd switch it up a little bit. So this week, I have a special guest by the name of Michelle Rowland. Now, Michelle, as well as being a consultant and trainer in the project management world and program management world, she's also a chief examiner. A chief examiner, I have little experience of what they actually do, being completely honest with you. So I thought, you know what, let's bring Michelle on board. Even though we've known each other for a while, we've never actually talked about the chief examiner role that she actually carries out, how she got into it, why she does it, and so on. So I thought, let's bring Michelle on, so not just open up my eyes, but also to inform you guys what it's all about. So Michelle, thank you very much for taking the time out and welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you took the time out. So before we get into the chief examiner role, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got into the world of training and what it actually means to you?
Okay, so yeah, I'm married. I've got 2 children. My eldest is almost 23 and my youngest is almost 18, probably off to university in September. But the eldest has come back home, so I'm not alone. I won't be alone, empty nest. Yeah, I was previously a project manager and program manager and even portfolio manager. And then back in 2003, I became a trainer. Self-employed, and about 2004 I think it was, I saw a job advertised by APMG. They used to run the exams including Prince 2 and managing successful programs. I'm going to call that MSP going forward, and I saw a job advertised as an MSP examiner. And I was reluctant to apply because I thought, well, what am I going to bring to the role? I've only been doing this recently, only just been qualified, blah, blah, blah. And then on the last day when applications closed, I sent in my CV and an application. Before I knew it, I had an interview and I was an MSP examiner, attending exam panels, marking exam papers. About a year later, I became a senior examiner, so they made me one of the chief examiners, so one of the senior people across the world, marking exam papers, marking borderline papers. And then when in around 2009, the MSP exams went into the objective test format. That's multiple choice for the practitioner exam. I was instrumental in doing the exam design, writing questions, reviewing and signing off questions. Then 2013, in 2013, the exams moved over to Axelos. Axelos became the owner of the methods and the exams. And in 2013, they recruited me as Prince 2 Chief Examiner. Shortly afterwards, I became P3O Chief Examiner as well. P3O is Portfolio, Program and Project Offices. And I was in that role for about 5 years, 5-6 years. I'm still Prince 2 Chief Examiner. And about a year ago, I swapped from being P3O Chief Examiner to being Management of Portfolios Chief Examiner, MOP. So I'm still Chief Examiner of 2 products for Axelos, but now it's Prince 2 and MOP.
Wow, you've certainly got your hands full with all of that.
Absolutely.
So what got you into wanting to be a chief examiner? What was the key driver behind it?
I enjoyed being a trainer, but I'd wanted to do something where I could work from home some of the time. and also where I could do something a bit more taxing. So originally, when I became an MSP examiner, I was able to mark the exam papers from home. And my children were quite small, so that gave me an opportunity while they were in school and even nursery to do some work while they were off being looked after by somebody else, as well as training. So I was able to work more full-time, still not full-time at that point. And then now I do it alongside the training work. And mostly I just do it in addition to the training work as opposed to blocking out time, except for when there's new products being developed, when I need to allocate more time.
So from my world, okay, so just keep your chief examiner's hat on for today, if that's okay. I know it's difficult when you're juggling so many things. So from my world as a trainer and a consultant, how can I help you in what you do as a chief examiner? What would you like me to do?
As a trainer or a consultant, if you have queries on exam papers, issues that you don't like, questions you think are ambiguous or unclear or could be clearer, whatever you want to call it, if you could send those questions through to examinations@axelos.com. They get forwarded on to the relevant chief examiner. If it's Prince 2 or MOP, that's me. If it's another product like ITIL, then it'll be the relevant chief examiner for that. The chief examiner would then review that issue that was raised. If it looks like the question's fine, there's nothing wrong with it, they would reply back and the reply would be sent to the trainer to help them as a learning point. If, however, the question does look ambiguous in the light of the trainer's comments, often when you look at it again in a different scenario with different comments, you think, maybe it could be read in a different way. Then the question would be changed. If the question's changed, then somebody else would review the question before it goes live.
Okay, that's actually handy to know, because previously, as a trainer, you think, okay, all these questions and so on are thought up by somebody sitting in an ivory tower who's got no experience whatsoever in the real world, in the training world, or in the actual corporate working world. So it's actually good to know that there is somebody who's sitting there who knows how the whole thing actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the question authors are trainers or consultants, one or the other. We've all got experience in the certifications, either delivering training, as I say, or working in the consultancy world. Mm-hmm. We all have to be certified in the product which we write exam questions for. So we have to have done the exams as well. So we're all very experienced individuals. And I think hopefully that makes for good questions. Obviously, nobody can predict how one individual or another individual is going to read a question. And that's where ambiguity creeps in, that we all have our own personalities, we all have our own biases, our own perspectives, whatever you want to call them. And therefore, we will always read questions in a slightly different way.
Yeah, that brings me on to another point, actually, is the delegate's perspective, the one who's actually carrying out the exam. I know I personally have had people say to me, question 20 didn't make any sense, or question 19 was really ambiguous. So how do we actually, is it the same process of getting in contact with you, like you said previously? Can the delegates get in contact with you themselves if they want to? Not you personally,
but an email. Yeah, they could send an email in, and normally that would be through the ATO. Mm-hmm. And the ATO would forward it on.
ATO being, for those who don't know?
Accredited training organisation. So through the training organisation they've had their training through, they can raise an issue through that. Or they can just say to the trainer, and the trainer can make a note of the question that was a particular concern. So it was question 20. If they take a note of either the exam date and time, any exam codes that are available on if it's an online exam, on the screen or on the bottom of the exam paper, if all that information is submitted through, that would then be reviewed and considered.
So say if I now want to become a chief examiner, what's the process behind that? What process do I follow?
Well, Axelos, when they're developing products or reviewing existing products, will often advertise for trainers or consultants to become examiners. you just send in your CV to the relevant exam team. The exam team will review your CV and decide if they think you're suitably qualified. And then they would give you appropriate training. And then you start writing questions.
Okay. Oh, writing questions. I'm not sure if I'm up to that just yet, but you never know. Pretty soon I may well be. I've been doing service management, it seems like, since the day I was born. So that's something for me to think about myself, actually. So, you know, progress myself in that way.
I quite like doing it because it gives me something. If I don't want to be training back to back, I can keep some of the exam development work, you know, for that week when I've booked a slot in my diary and I'm not going to work. It gives me something more taxing to do, a bit different. You know.
So what are some of the challenges you've come across then in the role of a chief examiner?
Some of the challenges, designing the exam correctly, reviewing appeals. Occasionally we get appeals that come through, and deciding what should happen with the appeal. Obviously on an objective test exam, unless there are ambiguous questions in the paper, there's no real grounds for appeal. But reviewing those to decide whether the appeal is justified, that can be a challenge. Reviewing the manuals when a new product comes out, so when Prince2 2017 was launched, reviewing the manual to provide comments and feedback and make sure it's an examinable text as well.
So do you actually, have you put a manual together yourself, or have you been involved in putting one together, rather than the review side?
I have written the Passing the Prince2 Exams book. So okay. I was the primary lead author on that, the most recent book that was published on Passing the Prince2 Exams. But I am normally involved just in reviewing the books. I don't tend to write my own books at this time.
If somebody wanted to read any articles that you're in, have you written any articles or blogs or anything like that?
I'm well published on the Axelos website. There's probably 3 or 4 blogs of mine a year, so that's probably over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm probably published 10 times, something like that. Lots of blogs. Some of my articles have had lots of views. I have no idea why.
I'll tell you why, because they're really informative. I've read them. They're really informative, your blogs are, you know, and that just goes to show your reputation within the industry itself. The fact that you're publishing blogs so often on that website, which as trainers that we all go through, not just trainers, but corporate organizations, you know, charities over when they're looking for training and so on, is to go to the official websites and to read up about these subjects rather than just shoving a load of people on training courses. You know, is to really find out what these subjects are actually about as well. And I think that's right. It's really important to have people like yourself, and some of the other trainers that I've previously spoken to have also published blogs as well. So there's a reason why you're on there, not just for the sake of writing it. And you know that. So, you know, I mean, like you said, you do a mixed bag of things as well as the chief examiner stuff. If you had to choose, I'm going to push you a little bit on this one, but if you had to choose, which one would you actually go for? If you had to do one or the other, training or the development, which I'm assuming is more chief examiner kind of stuff, which one would you rather do? If I pushed you. I know you love both.
I love both. I couldn't choose. I think the chief examiner role gives me intellectual stimulus in a different way. Training obviously is intellectually stimulating too, and it's also, you know, appeals to the fact that I can be with other people and spend time and interact, etc. Whereas the chief examiner role is quite a solo role quite a lot of the time, although there are meetings and workshops that I go to, but a lot of what I do in the chief examiner role is at home reviewing stuff on my own. So it's a bit more isolating. So I think it would be difficult to choose that as the sole role. But equally, if you said to me I had to train every week, week in, week out without a break, I think I'd also not want to do that, because I do like to have some time out of training, because I think that's exhausting too.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. I know, you know, from the days when I was flat out 5 days a week delivering training, it was by the time Friday comes round, your brain's just frazzled.
Yeah.
So,
So, you know, neither would be great, I think, for me full time, but I love them both. They work well together.
oh, that's good to know. One of the things that I wanted to ask you as well, you know, the role that you do is very important. From a female perspective, when you first became a chief examiner, was there more men doing it than women, or was it equally balanced out? I mean, how have you found it?
Well, initially, when back in 2004, when I started being an examiner for MSP, Managing Successful Programs, there were probably predominantly men. It was quite a male-dominated world. Now, in the Prince 2 exams team, I would say there are actually more women, interestingly enough, now. Things have changed over time. It's just about the way the balance is, I think. It's just moved slightly, not deliberately, it's just the way it's gone.
Yeah, I found that myself in the training world from the service management perspective, and you've seen it as well, is that when I first started delivering service management training, 8 years ago, I was one of the very few females who were delivering, and you'd walk into the room and they'd be like, oh, it's a woman coming to do service management training. But now it's become the norm because there's quite a few women who are delivering all of this. So, you know, I want the young girls who are watching this to understand they can do it as well. It's not just a man's world, that we can actually deliver the training. We've got the experience, move into roles like the chief examiner and publisher and blogs and so on as well. I mean, what would be your advice to anybody, never mind women, anybody who wants to get into the field that you're in?
Just, you know, make sure you've got enough technical expertise first, and then put yourself out there. Start writing blogs, start getting involved. Build up your CV and then look for opportunities. I mean, there are lots of exam boards and bodies. There's the APM, which does the project management qualification, risk level 1 certifications, project fundamentals qualification. They need markers and people who write questions. I've done that in the past as well. There's also APMG. They have their own products such as change management, managing benefits. COBIT, I think, is an APMG product, if I'm right.
Yes, it is.
So there are lots of exam boards and bodies in the UK that you can approach and see what they say. But you need relevant experience and knowledge, so build that up before you apply.
Yeah, I think that's quite important as well. It's not just a matter of reading a book. You've got to have the experience behind it, because you've got to then be able to give the examples to the people in the room who are there to learn from you. Michelle, this has been absolutely enlightening. I know I've learned a lot about being a chief examiner, which I had no idea about previously. So thank you so much. But one thing I just want to touch on though is, how do people actually get hold of you if they want to know more about this? Especially if anybody is thinking about getting into training, maybe in project management or the consultancy side, chief examiner, how do they actually get hold of you?
Look for me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn and contact me through that. Thank you. Okay,
so look for Michelle Rowland on LinkedIn, or if you want to, come through myself. So you'll find me on LinkedIn as well, ManjeetNijjer, or drop me an email if that's what you want to do, gmstraining@outlook.com. And then I can actually pass all your details on to Michelle, which I'm sure she'll get back to you. She's a very busy woman though, so be warned. She's got a lot on, she's got lots of balls that she's juggling. So thank you very much for watching this episode. If you found this interesting, or you think somebody else might actually gain something from it, learn something from it, you know, be inspired to do what we do, then please do share this. You know, we're doing this for you guys to pass the message out about training and what it actually means and how you can get involved in it. So remember to like and subscribe, and also hit the bell icon so when the new episodes come out, you get that notification. So thank you again for watching this episode. Watch out for future episodes because I'm going to keep switching up a bit. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye.